It's from the Pythagorean Theorem. If given a right triangle, you can use this formula to figure out the measurements of the sides of the triangle. Pythagoras of Samos is often described as the first pure mathematician who developed this theorem. He is an extremely important figure in the development of mathematics, yet we know relatively little about his mathematical achievements. Unlike many later Greek mathematicians, where we at least have some of the books which they wrote, we have nothing of Pythagoras' writings. The society which he led, half religious and half scientific, followed a code of secrecy, which means that even today, Pythagoras certainly is a mysterious figure. Little is known of Pythagoras' childhood. All accounts of his physical appearance are likely to be fictitious, except the description of a striking birthmark which Pythagoras had on his thigh. Certainly he was well educated, learning to play the lyre, learning poetry, and to recite Homer. Pythagoras was a native of the island of Samos. During his early life, Samos was governed by the powerful tyrant Polycrates. Pythagoras did not sympathize with his government, and thus immigrated to Croton, now Crotone on the east heel of southern Italy. Obviously, it was here where Pythagoras developed most of his important ideas and theories. Like Thales, Pythagoras is rather known for mathematics than for philosophy. Anyone who can recall math classes will remember the first lessons of plane geometry that usually start with the Pythagorean Theorem about right-angled triangles. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. In spite of its name, the Pythagorean theorem was not discovered by Pythagoras, but he was the first to formally prove it using deductive geometry and the first to actively market it throughout the ancient world. The earliest known formulation of the theorem was written down by an Indian mathematician in 800 BC. The principle was also known to the earlier Egyptian and the Babylonian master builders. Pythagoras founded a society of disciples in Croton, which has been very influential for some time. Men and women in the society were treated equally, an unusual thing at the time, and all property was held in common. His immediate followers were strongly influenced by him, and even until today, Pythagoras shines through the mist of ages as one of the brightest figures of early Greek antiquity. Pythagoras was the head of the society with an inner circle of followers known as mathematikoi. The mathematikoi lived permanently with the society, had no personal possessions, and were vegetarians. They were taught by Pythagoras himself and obeyed a religion the tenets, or main beliefs, of which included the transmigration of souls and the sinfulness of eating beans. Pythagoras' followers had to obey strict religious rules where it was forbidden to eat beans, to touch white fowl, or to look into a mirror beside a light. Pythagoras upheld many beliefs which he passed on to his disciples. The beliefs that he upheld were that at its deepest level, reality is mathematical in nature. 2. That philosophy can be used for spiritual perfection. 3. That the soul can rise to union with the divine. 4. That certain symbols have a mystical significance. And 5. That all brothers of the order should observe strict loyalty and secrecy. But above all, Pythagoras believed that everything could be solved with math. In his mind, it would work something like this.
Two plus two is 4.
Hey, I'm not dead. I'm getting better.
But alas, this is how it would really happen.
What? Come on.
Two plus two is 4. Well, that didn't work. Back to the drawing board.
The reports of Pythagoras' death are varied. He is said to have been killed by an angry mob, or been burned out of his school in Croton, and then went to Metapoton, where he starved to death. At least 2 stories include a scene where Pythagoras refuses to trample a crop of bean plants in order to escape, and because of this, he is caught. From Pythagoras we observe that an answer to a problem in science may give way to new questions. For each door we open, we find another closed door behind it. Eventually, these doors will also be opened and reveal answers in a new dimension of thought. The sprawling tree of progressively complex knowledge evolves in such a manner. This Hegelian recursion, which is in fact a characteristic of scientific thought, may or may not have been obvious to Pythagoras. In either way, he stands at the beginning of it.
Like a coin that won't get tossed.